Hey everyone, welcome back to Tuesday Tea with me, Alisha Bowker Mudrock. Today I have one of my best friends on. She and I met back in the many years ago when we were at Columbia. She hated me at first, but I made her love me. But we've been friends for over almost 15 years now, which is crazy. And she's an incredible human therapist, mother of two. I love her so much. And I'm here today with her, Miss Christy DeRosa, to talk to us about managing and navigating change and transitions as a mom and as a woman who's moved a lot and has a husband who travels a lot for work and just always all these moving parts. She is like an expert on navigating transitions and change. I wanted her on today to really talk to us about just some of her tips and tricks and just getting into the nitty gritty about it. So I will kind of turn it over to you, Christy, but thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. I'm so honored you asked me to do it. And thanks for such a great introduction. Um, yeah, as you mentioned, I think change has always been in my life. And I think the biggest change was honestly first becoming a therapist. I think that we put a lot of like pressure expectations on ourselves, and you kind of see these roles in life and you want to kind of mold yourself. And I think the biggest thing is kind of getting to know yourself first, really like understanding yourself and like what you want out of it. And I know we touched on this briefly earlier, but just realizing who you are as a person and how you fit into that industry and what you can bring to the table versus
Yeah.
trying to fit into this like stereotypical
Mm.
therapist role, right? Even for me,
Mhm.
I think I'm a louder person. I'm not the soft spoken therapist on TV that's just going to let you like talk it out and just like do nothing in session but vent. I think I'm very much solution focused. I'm a little bit more boisterous in my opinions and advice, and it fits for some and it doesn't fit for other people, and that's okay. And I think I had to like get used to that, like being
Mhm.
okay with who I was and allowing myself that, right? And not changing myself, right? So I think even transitioning into my field and our field, it's, kind of really knowing yourself, right?
Yeah.
And also the biggest thing is not losing your identity, right? I think that even personally, like going through changes such as motherhood, right? And, becoming a wife, I think it's really about knowing who you are, what your identity is, and wanting to stick to that and really paying attention to your own needs in the process, right?
Yeah.
I think sometimes we lose ourselves. Like we
Yeah.
just get in these roles and we just go on autopilot. And then we
Mhm.
never really look back and go, well, what do I want? What do I need right now? Like, what is good for me here? And I've heard so
Right.
many people say, like, oh, I don't even know what makes me happy anymore, because that
Right.
changes. It's like not the same
Right.
when we were 20. It's not
Nope.
the same when we're 30, and it changes. And we still have to be curious and pay attention to us still. Like I feel like people lose themselves and it's really, really hard to see, honestly. So
Yeah, no, those are such great points. Last week, we spoke about living in alignment with your values. And I
mhm.
think this really is a great, like, secondary conversation to that, because if we aren't clear on our values, where we're
Right.
headed, who we are, then
Yeah.
it's very hard to navigate change and transition. Because, like
Right.
you said, a change or a transition, even the best of ones, and the
Right.
ones that are the worst or we didn't ask for or want,
Yeah.
it's a lot of information and a lot of voices and a lot of other people's agendas coming at us at
Uh-huh.
once. And if
Yeah.
we are not clear on who we are, what we're trying to get out of it, what our place is in it, it's
Yes.
so easy to get like almost if you think of a wave, right? Like if I'm standing there, I see the wave, I
Yeah.
know it's happening. Water. Um, I can like handle the wave and like avoid it. If I didn't know
Right.
it was coming, I'm just like tumbling. I don't know which way's up. I don't
Right.
know, like where my stuff is on the shore, right? And so while we can't always control, predict,
Right.
or anticipate certain changes or transitions,
Yeah.
we can keep coming back to ourselves to keep checking in with who we are at any season to
Yeah.
then better equip ourselves to navigate all the unknowns or the things
Right.
outside of our control.
Yeah. And I love that analogy, the wave. I use it like with a lot of my clients, even because I feel we always try to like jump at the 10th wave and figure out what that one's going to look like. And, especially with change, right? You're always trying to map things out and we don't like the unknown. So we try to like control the uncontrollable. So I think sometimes we get so focused on like looking forward and trying to like figure it all out. And it's sort of like just dialing back and just taking the wave as it hits you. Like the wave in front
Yeah.
of you, what does it look like? What do I need to do right now?
Right.
Not so much like going so far forward, right? Or so far in the past. Like I think
Yeah.
a lot of times, and this is sort of the mindfulness work I've been doing is like really looking at just taking things in the present moment and living right here, right now, and not so much in the past or the future, right? And I think that's
Mhm.
hard for a lot of people. I think we struggle with that a lot. And
Yeah.
rightfully so. I think human nature is we don't like the unknown, right? So like we want to kind of
Right.
prepare ourselves for anything. But I
Mhm.
think the best way to be prepared is to be present, honestly.
100%. And I think that's what we miss a lot of the time. And I have to
Yeah.
work on it. Like, as I preach
Yeah.
it to my clients, I'm working on it too. Because yes, to survive, we want to be aware. We want to be like
Right.
scanning, figuring out
Yep.
what could happen. However, if it's like if I'm thinking about the potential burglar that might break into my house, but I'm missing the fire on my stove right now because I'm not
Right.
present, well, I'm
Yep.
not, who cares? My house isn't going to be here for anyone to burgle, right?
Right.
Like if it burns down. So I think that's so true. And if we can have that shift in thinking of I'm
Yeah.
actually more prepared for what I can't see or anticipate yet, if I'm present and thinking about right now,
Yeah.
it gives us more of a sense of safety and it gives us more buy-in for why we should practice trying to be more present and
Right.
viewing what's happening here and today. Again, not trying to predict what the 10th wave is going to look like or what angle it's going
Right.
to hit me at because there's going to be 9 in between there, right? So
Right.
it doesn't
Yeah.
matter today what that
Exactly.
looks like.
100%. And I think that's the hardest thing with change is like we just don't know what's happening. And like you said, I think if we're trying to like predict the whole situation or write the script for it, so to speak, like we're missing right now. Like it's happening
Yeah.
right now and we're
Yeah.
missing it. And I think that's a really hard thing for people is that change is really scary at times for people. Some people love it,
Mhm.
and there could be, as you mentioned, like good change, bad change, right? And I think it's really the mindfulness and living in the moment helps us to also manage what's in front of us right now instead of like getting too overwhelmed with the change.
Mhm.
Because it could be big. I remember moving from Connecticut to Florida. Oh my gosh. I was sitting there going, okay, I have to figure out closing out all my caseloads. I had to figure out getting like a moving truck on the side. And then I have to like ship my car. Like I was just like, if you looked at it, it was so big and scary that I almost like it could cripple me. Like, but I
Right.
decided instead, and it was so funny how it happened. Like I didn't sit myself down and like do this in a way where I was like, okay, this is how I'm going to handle it. Like,
Mhm.
but I
Mhm.
figured out that if I just was like, okay, today is the moving truck day. Today at 10:30, I'm going to call the moving truck company and I'm going to map that out, right? So
Mhm.
I just did that and I didn't worry about anything else because I couldn't. I had to just
Yeah.
do one thing and then move on to the next thing. So I
Mhm.
think with change too, it's like taking it like the wave analogies, like one wave at a time, like one thing at a time, because we really can't get overwhelmed with stuff. And I can't even tell you, if you ask my kids right now, the one phrase I say more than anything, and maybe it's my ADHD brain, but I need to do one thing at a time. Like,
Yeah.
because you can't, like you said, like if you're too busy focusing on one thing, you're gonna miss a thing right in front of you, right? So I
Mhm.
need to just picture one thing at a time, finish the one thing, and move on, right?
Mhm.
Because then you feel accomplished too. Like you feel
Yeah.
good about it. Like yes, I called that moving company, good. Now
Yep.
I can move on to the next thing. But if I thought about all the tasks from moving from Connecticut to Florida, forget it. I would have probably
Yeah.
just cried in a corner. I would have been like, I'm not doing this. Goodbye.
100%. As someone who has moved also to 5 different
Yeah,
states
you know better
within
than
each
me.
state multiple times,
Right.
you just gotta pare it down. And I'm thinking too, even about if it's not like a task-oriented change, it's
Yeah.
also thinking about that in this term of how we feel about it, right?
Right.
There's gonna be a lot of emotions. Even for
Oh,
someone who
yeah.
loves change, I still hate it at times, right?
Yeah.
And so it's really not trying to feel all the feelings all at once. It's like,
Right.
okay, I've worked a lot too with parents who their kids are going back to school right now, right? And there's like
Yeah.
a lot of feelings about that. Maybe it's their first time in school, the new school year, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's like, what are all the feelings you're having? You're pumped because
Right.
they're gonna be out of the house for a while. You're like devastated that they're old enough to be in school. You're
Yeah.
feeling overwhelmed and like horrified by like trying to get them up in the morning,
Right.
but if you try to feel all those at once and problem solve them all, it's not gonna happen. So it's how can you step back and again, like take one emotion at a time, one
Yeah.
feeling at a time, one
Yeah.
task at a time, and not judge them. And I
Right.
think that's hard too when we think about
True.
transitions and change. We say it, we even have said it. Is it a good change or a bad change? Is it this or
Right.
that? What would it look like to just know life is fluid and to take
Yeah.
the judgment out of it, to see
True.
if we can like partner with it maybe a little differently than
Mhm.
this is bad. So I already have all this
Mhm.
like wall between me and this event that has to happen or this thing. But what
Right.
if it wasn't bad? What if it was
Sure.
just uncomfortable or it is what it is? Like,
Yeah.
how might we approach it a little bit differently? You know?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think perspective is key. Like, I really
Mhm.
believe that, right? And it's the lenses we put on for the day, right? If this is a bad change and we're putting those lenses on, guess what?
Gonna
Everything's
be a
going to
bad.
suck. Everything's going to be miserable. It's
Yeah.
going to be terrible. I'm going to be dreading it. And
Yeah.
that's the world. And that's my reality, right? But
Mhm.
if we look at it and look at it like, wow, this change is going to be good. Let me put my good lenses on. Wow, look at all the good things I can look forward to. Look at all the happy things around me. Wow, I'm so fortunate I'm able to do this. Like I can
Yeah.
actually hire a moving company. I don't have to do it myself, right? Like
Yeah.
if you just change your perspective, I think it changes everything. Honestly, like you're saying, I think it's huge. I
Mhm.
don't think it's so easy to do all the time. I won't say that,
Yep.
but I think if we try to like challenge it a little bit and kind of
Yeah.
go, well, I could either sit here and dwell in this, right? Or I can challenge myself to look at this in a different way, And I
Mhm.
think even having support like friends to just bounce things off of would be helpful because maybe they can see it differently than you can, right? Um,
100%. Yeah.
so I think it is true. Like perspective is everything, I think too.
Yeah. And my other friend Katie had been on in the past, and a great analogy
Mhm.
she gave that it still sticks with me all the time is this idea of like you're on a path and there's a big boulder in the way.
Yeah.
We can sit down and just like basically dive behind the boulder and never go anywhere. Or
Right.
we can problem solve. We can like have our
Yep.
feeling for a moment, get up, try to climb it. We can ask someone
Right.
for help. We can try to go around it, right? Like how
Yeah.
there's so many options. We like jackhammer it, explode. Like
Right.
there's so many options. But again, like we have the option. We didn't
Right.
choose for the boulder to be there, but
Right.
everything we do next is
Yes.
actually in our control. And if we can
Right.
remember that, it
Yes.
doesn't mean it has to feel good. It doesn't mean it has to be the best thing ever. It
True.
doesn't mean we have to be positive about it, but we feel more empowered to make movement, which then
Hmm.
gets us to the next place.
Right.
Right? It's like
Yep.
when we're stuck, when there
Mhm.
isn't change, when there isn't transition,
Yeah.
I argue that's actually a really scary and dangerous place to be in. Like, what's not
Right.
happening? Where are you not
Yeah.
growing? What are you
Yeah.
not like seeing? What are you not doing with your life? Like, how empty is it? Because we should always sort of be in some state of change, which is growth, which is new things, which is learning, and I
Mhm.
and I think when we don't have that, again, it doesn't have to be as big as like a move every 2 years or something, but when we don't have that or we're not feeling that, then that I think is a good time to tune in, like, what's going on here? What am I so disconnected from, or where am I not pushing myself a bit
Mhm.
too?
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really good analogy, though. It's something good to remember, right? Because I
Mhm.
also think we, when we feel something, I feel like we want to run away from it too, like, or distract ourselves or like not feel it. And I think that analogy kind of says, sit with it for a second. It's okay. And I use the analogy of like jumping into a cold pool, right? The first thing you
Mhm.
want to do is what? Jump out of it, right? No one
Yeah.
wants to sit in it.
Not even
Doesn't feel
kidding.
great. Yeah. Like I'm like, I want to get out of freezing. I do this with my kids all the time, by the way. They're like, get in the pool with me. And I'm like, it's 70 degrees outside. No. Um,
Thumbs
but
down.
I'm like, it's not great, right? But if you could just sit in it for a second, your body kind of adjusts and your like initial intense reaction kind of calms down a little bit. And then you realize, I'm okay. Like this isn't so bad. And we learn to kind of also be with the emotion differently than distracting ourselves from it, running from it. We're in it. And it kind
Yeah.
of is actually a great way to get ourselves used to change and the emotions that come with it. And then being like, this is okay. This is normal. now what am I going to do? Like you said, like, am I going to climb it? Am I going to go around it? Like, what can I do here? You know?
Right, right. What do you think has been some helpful strategies that you've personally used to navigate like the tinier little changes and transitions? Like the big ones, I think,
Yeah.
like sometimes are easier to give
Oh, yeah.
ideas for. But what
Yeah.
about just like, I don't know, you had a plan, your kid got sick, you can't go, you had to pivot here, you had to do that. Like, what helps you sort
Yeah.
of like stay grounded and actually tactfully navigate and manage those, or not, like what, or maybe something that didn't work and you learned after,
Yeah.
but what would you maybe give some strategies or suggestions on?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think that it's a lot for me. I mean, as a therapist, my biggest thing is talking it out, right? So, like, I'm always, if something goes wrong, I need to like vent it out first. Like, I need to kind of just like get it out, express it. And then it kind of gives me a time to realize my emotions came down a little bit. And now I'm at a place to think more like clearly. Like, but
Mhm.
I think the big thing is when you feel your emotion, you kind of got to know like what to do with it. Like, do you
Yeah,
need to like jump in the shower? Do you need to call someone? Like, what helps you get that energy out a little bit so that you can come out of like your emotional mind, as us therapists say, to
yeah,
come into
yeah.
like more of a logical state, right? um and I think for me too is like staying on top of self-care. Like sometimes I don't work out as much, and that like really shows. Like if I don't
Mhm.
work out and get my energy out and then my kids frustrate me, I can't handle it as well. So I think it's also about having the strategies and using them day to day, even if it's not happening in the moment, right? Staying
Mhm,
on top of
mhm.
like sleep is huge for me. I know I'm a big sleep person. So I'm like, if I don't sleep, those kids like yell at me. I'm like, oh my God, I can't do this anymore. I was like,
I
someone get
quit,
me out of here.
giving you back.
Um, right. Like I just can't, I don't seem to like handle the day to day stuff as well. Like I just
Hmm.
know sleep is important, exercise is important for me, and then also just having support, right? Like people around you where you feel like you can just call them and just vent it out so that you can get into that other mindset of like, all right, now what am I going to do? How am I going to handle this? Because it is frustrating too. Like when your plans get disrupted or, things change out of nowhere. I think also it has taught me the little changes are harder for me. Like
Yeah,
big changes, I feel like I've
you're
not
like, I
mastered.
got
I
this.
won't I
Right,
won't say mastered, but I will say I feel like big stuff, I'm like, "All right, I got this." Like,
right.
little
Read my
changes, I'm like,
checklist.
"Come on, I can't go to the concert because my kid has 102 fever," right? Like, it
Yes,
frustrates me, and then, like, everything gets disoriented. I'm kind of like, "Oh my god, this is terrible. Like, what am I gonna do now?" Right? And, I think it's about, again, trying to get my emotions down to a place where I can then be like, "Okay, well, what can we do about it right now? Like, what can we do
right,
differently here?"
right, right.
Um, yeah. Does that answer it?
Yeah, so it sounds like, one, you're saying check in with your emotional state, and again, we're
Yeah.
not trying to judge it or change it, but just
Yeah.
really be aware of it and then give it what it needs. Emotions are energy. Do you need to
Yep.
move? Do you need to talk? Do you need to
Yep.
do something safely? Do you need to, like, stand outside? Do you need to
Yeah.
sleep? Like, whatever. And
Yeah.
then, two, keeping up with your practices that help you stay at your best so you
Yeah.
can tolerate those disruptions the best
Yes.
you can. Like,
Right.
for you, movement, good sleep,
Yep.
for others might be similar, or like, making sure you're hydrated, making sure
Yeah.
you're eating, getting some alone time, like to each his own, getting creative, whatever it is.
Mhm.
But as
Yeah.
best you can, keeping up with those gives you a better foundation for when inevitably life is going to happen
Right.
and we're not going to have, we're going to have to handle something we didn't anticipate.
Right. Yep.
And
Exactly.
I was also thinking with like why small changes might be harder, because I totally agree. I think I love a good big change. I mean, I hate it and I love it, but I
Yeah.
wonder too if it's because generally we have, for a lot of big changes, not always, some are unexpected, but a lot of bigger changes, we have some time. So there's
Yes.
some prep. I think for the littler things, it sounds like that's where you get more dysregulated
Yep.
quicker. I think similarly, and I'm thinking back to COVID, and while there was a lot of big changes, for me, the
Mhm.
hardest ones when we were coming out of COVID was the unknown of if the
Yeah.
little things were really gonna happen. Like, did I
Yeah.
really trust the concert wasn't gonna get canceled when we started having concerts again? Was
Yeah.
this trip gonna get all fucked up because like someone's gonna pop positive for something?
Right.
Like
Right.
stuff that I had never like didn't really feel as like tenuous to me before COVID. But I think
Mhm.
it really brought that out for me as well of like I do have a harder time with the last minute sudden you're
Yes.
taking away some, especially when it's something fun or something you're looking forward to.
Yes. Yeah.
And it made us not be able to trust anything. It felt like I can't trust any plan is real or is
Right.
happening in a whole
Yeah.
new way.
Yeah.
And that was like a different negotiation I've had to even continue to figure out.
Right.
I still get a little more than I
Right.
ever used to around stuff that like I didn't think twice about. I was like, of course we're gonna go do that. Why would we not? Right. And now it's like,
Right.
is it gonna happen?
Yeah, and now
So,
there's just that doubt, like, that creeps in, right? So you're just like, you could see, because it was like the one time where like things that were like everyday things were like kind of
oh,
taken
yeah,
away a little bit, right? And we
yeah,
weren't like didn't have the same access to things, right? Which is kind
yeah.
of scary. I think the other thing too I wanted to touch on is like expectations, right? If we sort of
Mhm.
wake up with these expectations, the day's gonna go this way. Like this just happened in Cape Cod. We were in Cape Cod, we were going on a fishing trip with the kids. They were so excited. We're driving to the boat. They call and they're like, winds are too bad, can't go. I'm like, oh my God. And it was actually really interesting. The kids were okay. I wasn't
Yeah,
because I
okay.
was like, what are we going to do? We had this whole plan. I had this whole thing booked out. Now, like,
Right,
now what? Like, what it was
right,
really
right.
interesting. I think the kids were better at it. Like, they were just like, all right, let's
Um,
go mini golfing. And I'm like, okay, but that's not what I
fine,
want
but
it
yeah,
to look like.
yeah,
But because I think I had this expectation of like, this is what's going to happen. And I nailed it in my head.
yeah,
This is how Tuesday's going today in the Cape. Like, we're
yeah,
doing this all day. It's going to
yeah,
be a 5-hour day. It's going to be great. And yes, I was looking forward to it. But the second it got disrupted, because I had that expectation in my head,
right. It
I
like
just think I was so dysregulated. I was like, I couldn't kind of snap out of it for a second, which was interesting. I kept like,
mhm.
feel like I was a toddler, like, wait, I want to
Like, I
go.
wanna
What
have
is
my
that?
tantrum in the back seat about this.
I was like, oh my God, this is so interesting right now. But it was really good because I realized that they were all right. Like it's okay, and I think it teaches us maybe again to go with the flow more. Like, you know,
Yeah,
it's all right. Things are gonna come up, like things are gonna change. Like, and you know what? We're gonna be okay and we're gonna figure it out, right? Like, and it ended
right.
up being a great day, but I had to work on myself right there because if I didn't, guess what? I was putting those lenses on that this day was gonna suck. Like
Yeah,
literally. It was
yeah,
this close, and I was like, I have a choice right now to make. Like, am I
right,
gonna make this miserable for everyone and be like,
right,
and wallow in this and be like,
right.
just negative about it? Or
Mhm.
could I put on the lenses that the kids already had on, by the way, in the back seat?
Yeah, they were like,
And they
"Cool."
were ready, like, let's go, mini golfing. Like, and I'm like,
Yeah.
so I actually pulled from them. It was actually the first time where like they taught me, well,
Oh,
mom, it's all right. Like, we're
that's
good with
cool.
anything. Like, we'll go another day. Like, and I'm like, yeah, you're right. Like, and if we don't, like, it's okay. Like
Yeah, it is what
just
it
kind of
is.
managing expectations there, right? Like not always putting this
Right.
thought in our head the day's going to go exactly like this or really be hard, like a hard sell on things, right? And
Yeah,
sort of just being more fluid, like you said. I think just being fluid is important. I think it helps us emotionally, mentally, with a lot of change, right? Is just kind of going with it, right? Not fighting it, not trying to prevent it, not trying to predict it, just kind of
right,
going with it, right? Taking it as it comes to you, so you're really present in it. And then you can really give the best of you to it because you're really in the moment, right? If we're so caught up in everything else, we're just
right.
distracted.
And I think you bring a good point too, that your energy impacts everyone else.
Yeah.
And that it would have been a bad day for everyone, right? And which is
Right.
so true. And I think we need to also remember the power we have. And
Yeah.
again, we're not preaching toxic positivity. You have to be happy all the time. You're
No,
allowed to feel
not at all.
disappointed. You were allowed to be really bummed about it. Like,
Yeah.
I think that's fair. We are humans.
Yeah.
We always have expectations, whether we
Right.
pretend we try to or not. Like, we always are going to have them, but it is
Right.
about managing them and it is
Yeah.
about being open to seeing what else could be an expectation we didn't realize. And like you said,
Yeah.
maybe it could even be better, or it could be equally as good, or it wasn't as fun, but it's like
Right.
an interesting story and it still was like not a bad day. right? We're
Yeah.
still on Cape Cod and it was still on vacation and it was great.
Right.
So
Yeah. Exactly.
I think that is important to remember and hold space for, that we have more power over ourselves than we
Yeah.
often think we do.
True.
And when we can tap into that, it's very freeing, and it's
Yes.
actually feels easier
Yeah.
than when we fight against it,
Yes.
or we're trying to work against. It's kind of like pain, right? What do they tell you?
Right.
Breathe into your pain,
Yes.
because it
Yep.
actually feels better than if
Yeah.
I tense up and I'm like, oh,
Right.
it's counterintuitive because your body wants to guard against the thing that
Right.
it's a workout, labor, you're gonna
Right.
get car accident, whatever. Like you want to like brace, but that actually is worse than like, okay, I'm gonna sit in it, I'm gonna breathe with
Yes.
it. Like it still fucking
Right.
hurts, but
Yeah.
it's like a little bit less and a little easier to
Yeah.
move through and withstand,
Right.
because I'm partnering. I'm not
Yes.
like in a battle with this
Yeah.
thing that is gonna happen. Like I can't, there's nothing else I can do about it in this,
Right.
you know.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And I think it's true. I think it's good to just like sit with the emotion for a minute, right? Like you said, we're not always going to be so happy. We're not going to be like, great, the fishing trip was canceled. Like, we can do anything.
Maybe
This
I
is
would
going to
have
be a great
been,
day. It
but
wasn't as fun as I think the day could have been, but it was still a good day because I chose that, right? Like, it was in my power to choose differently. But I did allow myself to just be like bummed. I was like, you know what, guys? It's okay. We're all a little bummed right now. Like, I'm feeling that too. Like, and I've even thought in parenthood, like, the biggest change too, like, totally different topic to switch into for a
yeah.
minute. I do think that we have the beauty this generation of like raising children to like show them our emotions and say it's okay to feel a little bummed and upset right now. And
Yeah.
I am too. Like, and then help each other through it. Like, I think that's actually beautiful versus like, in the past, a lot of parents were trying to be super positive and kind of hide the negative or scarier emotions. But I think it's important to kind of be with them in it, and be like, this is okay to be really upset right now. Like, I am too. Like, so what can we do about it? Like, how can we feel better? And our thing as a family is music. For some reason, like, it's like throw on a song and everyone's mood just kind of lifts. So we've like known that as like a good coping skill. We're bummed, throw on our favorite music. We went
Yeah.
around the car putting on our favorite songs. And it really did help to kind of get us out of that and move through it a little bit, like you're saying. So, I think it's about like learning to, you know, understand there's going to be harder emotions and then just kind of sitting in it and kind of being there and nurturing it a little bit and taking care of it and being like, you know what, this kind of does suck right now, but I'm going to choose to not sit in that for the whole day, and I'm going to allow myself to be in it for now, and then I'm going to put on the music and we're going to switch the day
Right.
around,
Love that. That's such a
yeah.
fun transition
Yeah.
to help move the mood. It's fair though. I also like music, definitely, I think speaks to a lot of us, right? And it can
Yeah.
feel it in your body, and whatever kind of music
Right.
you're putting on can really help shift you to that space. So
Yeah.
um any other last like thoughts, takeaways, little advice pieces you want to leave people with around this topic, or I don't know, another word of wisdom that you have?
I would say to embrace change. Just like you said, I think it's good. Change is good. I think it's very scary at times, but I think we got to just trust ourselves a lot here. That we're capable,
Mhm.
that we can do it. We can do big change, we can do little change. We just have to like pay attention to ourselves, take care of ourselves in it, know ourselves well enough to navigate it.
Yeah,
I do think change is a good thing. I think it is a learning experience too. I think it's a moment to learn yourself so well, where
yeah,
you can say to yourself, like, wow, I'm not that great with little change, but big change I'm better at. Like, that's a learning experience for me. So
right.
honestly, if we again like look at change your perspective on it, change has actually taught me a lot about myself. So I think it's a really cool learning experience for a lot of people.
Mhm.
And I think the more you can kind of get into that and get out of your comfort zone, and you kind of learn more, and you open yourself up to more. And I think it's a good thing to do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I love it. Embrace the change and use it as
Yep.
a huge learning experience, which
Yeah.
is so true.
Yeah.
Um, well, thank you so much for being here. Oh, did you hear that thunder?
No, I didn't hear it. No.
Oh, it just happened. It's a storm here. I so appreciate it. Is there anything else too that if you want to promote, anything you want to share with folks, anything, I don't
No,
know.
I think that was it. I think we got a lot covered actually, which was
Okay.
great. I think it was a great talk. Thanks for having
Yes,
me.
it was. Well, everyone have a great rest of your Tuesday. I'll see you next month and I will talk to y'all soon.